We have to talk about Trump's $500 billion platinum plan for Black America. Very attractive sounding name. Platinum plan reminds me of like a big platinum chain or platinum teeth or platinum car rims on a car or something like this. Very attractive. But I really want to talk about this. We're going to go through a couple of paragraphs from the Forbes article, and we're going to break down how much each vote will cost. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that $500 billion number, and then we're going to divide it by the number of black votes that President Trump is likely to get in 2020 to find out how much each vote will cost. It's the most expensive vote in America, the most expensive luxury vote in America. And we're consistently spending money on these votes. We're consistently spending money on this group of people in America without any real return on investment. And not only are we not getting a return on investment, so forget about the electoral. Let's just look at the number of dollars we have shoveled into these communities in America and the return on investment that just wasn't there. Not only are we not getting a return on investment, but then these people decide to destroy the cities in the country, setting things on fire, shooting people, crime surging, after they get their way with the whole defunding of the police, and police activity drops by 80% in Minneapolis, and arrests are down, and police start to transfer at the highest rates ever and retire at the highest rates ever. Crime surges, buildings crumble. This is our investment here. Not only are we not getting a return on investment, but the very thing that we're investing money into is actively attempting to destroy the things that we built from pre-invested money. You understand what's going on here. So we're going to go through Trump's platinum plan for Black America. We're going to talk about how much each vote will cost and what this means and what is a way better way for Trump to get these, or to at least attempt to get these votes. And what's a way better way of spending this $500 billion to get more votes than he could ever imagine. All of that and more next. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to check out the links in the description below for either preparewithvincent.com or waterwithvincent.com. I get a substantial portion of every order from either of these sites, and at preparewithvincent.com, you can get $100 off a 4-week emergency dry food supply. This dry food supply has a 25-year shelf life. It's actually cheaper than 4 weeks of food at your local grocery store. It has 2,000 calories a day, 284 servings, 12 different food varieties, and the 2-week emergency dry food supply is up on the site and ready to order as well. At waterwithvincent.com, you can get about $100 off of an Alexa Pure Pro water filtration system. Filters up to 5,000 gallons of water, removes 200 plus contaminants, including fluoride, viruses, bacteria, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals. So if you're thinking about stocking up on dry food supply, water filtration, things like this, do it through My Patriot Supply, but do it through this channel. It helps this channel tremendously. Both links are in the description below to use to give me credit. Preparewithvincent.com and waterwithvincent.com. So let's get right to this here. Before we get into the article, I just want to show you this tweet, and this is by Jason Miller. He's an associate. He works for President Trump. He's a 2020 senior advisor. And he shared this article from Forbes. And the thumbnail image on the article is like the Black Power flag. So just imagine this if this was in the reverse, of course. It would never be, because white people would be called racist if they even remotely try to advocate for other white people. But I just wanted to mention that. Let's move on to the article. This is Trump's Platinum Plan. On Friday, President Trump unrolled what he refers to as the Platinum Plan for Black America, calling for increased investment in black businesses and additional capital for black entrepreneurs. The president also announced support for Juneteenth to be recognized as a national holiday. Trump's proposed plan, which purports to be built on the 4 pillars of opportunity, security, prosperity, and fairness, calls for a range of measures in support for the black businesses and families. Including in the plan is a call for almost $500 billion of capital investment in the black community, with much of it coming from increased federal contracting opportunities and other investments. He also called for 500,000 new black businesses and 3 million jobs for black Americans. It gets better. Let's read a little bit more here. It says Trump's plan also calls to increase the number of black-owned contracting businesses, financial service entities, and private equity investment funds by means of regulatory reform and up to $40 billion in government funding, as well as leveraging infrastructure funding to increase opportunities for black businesses and federal contracting. Trump's proposal also references vague commitments for increases in black employment and home ownership, offering little details on both, in addition to the economic aspects of the plan. The president's plan proposes a range of other commitments to the black community, including criminal justice reforms that include diversity training for police forces. In addition, the president is promising a national clemency program to unite families and invest in human potential, focusing on wrongful prosecution and rehabilitation. The plan also proposes prosecuting the KKK, which hasn't done anything since 1960, if we compare that to what Black Lives Matter has done recently, let's look at Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization as far as like the hundreds of billions of dollars in damages are concerned. 50 to 100 different people dead, killed by the rioters alone. I mean, we can go on and on and on, right? The surge in crime, police retiring at the highest rates ever, police transferring out of the city at the highest rates ever, businesses leaving because of all of the rioting that is happening because of Black Lives Matter. But anyway, register the KKK and Antifa as terrorist organizations. Notably, the president's plan doesn't mention far-right white nationalist organizations, which federal law officials have identified as key proponents of race-based hate in America, which is just not even true. I mean, we've talked about that before. The Department of Homeland Security says black nationalists are of more concern. The FBI says this. Islamists are at the top. Black nationalists, number 2. White nationalists are far behind this. So we're looking at FBI, Department of Homeland Security data. Basically any department. They all say the same thing. Hate crimes, interracial attacks happen far more often perpetrated by black Americans, according to all of this data as well. And it's just like a lie. It's a outright lie, just like most of the media has been lying about a lot of other things. But anyway, moving on, we're going to give you our take on this here. Yeah, Trump's struggles with the black community are well known. He received just 8% of the black vote in the 2016 election, and a poll this week by Quinnipiac University found that only 10% of black voters plan to support Trump in November. So we're going to talk about this. I want to talk about this in terms of critical race theory, right? Because Trump has talked about banning critical race theory, right? He signed the executive order. He expanded that ban. Now, what does diversity training mean? Well, this is fucking critical race theory, Trump. What the fuck are you doing, dude? It's like so stupid to me because he talks about expanding the ban on critical race theory. He talks about how critical race theory is contrary to America and it's divisive. And he talks about white privilege and how this is divisive. But yet we're talking about diversity quotas and diversity training. This is critical race theory. Who do you think is going to be teaching the diversity training and hiring these people based on diversity quotas? So it goes contrary to what he just talked about in terms of like critical race theory. That's number one. Number two, if we're talking about mortgage loans for black Americans, they already get a lower interest rate than everyone else just for simply being black. Small business loans, they already get a lower interest rate than everyone else simply for being black. Affirmative action, we're talking about expanding that. That's already affecting white and Asian people. So contrary to what you've heard, there's a reason why so many people pretend to be everything other than white. Elizabeth Warren pretended to be Native American to get a leg up in society in her law career. Mindy Kaling's brother pretended to be black to get into medical school. These two professors recently pretend to be black to get a leg up in society, to get privilege points, right? There are privilege points for everyone, systemic or social, for everyone other than white people. That's basically what this comes down to. Contrary to popular belief, the only things that are embedded into the system overwhelmingly negatively affect white people and Asian people as well in terms of affirmative action, but socially and culturally as well. Like I said, there's a reason why everyone pretends to be everything other than white and everything other than straight, to get their oppression and privilege points in society, to continue to be sheltered by society. Moving on, another thing about this is that this will break down to about $5 million per vote. This is the most expensive vote. Doesn't Donald Trump always talk about how he's a businessman and how he likes to go after the cheaper option? Right? He talked about this in terms of the embassy, didn't he? Right? He talked about the cheaper option for the embassy in Israel. Well, this turns out to be about $5 million per vote. This is the most expensive vote in America, the most luxury vote in America that you're not even going to fucking get. So if we take 8%, right, let's talk about 8% in 2016. And by the way, in 2018, they voted less for Republicans than in 2016. The black female number went down for Republicans, up for Democrats. It's probably going to be about the same this time around. But besides the point, let's think of it in terms of him getting a couple of percentage points in the black vote. Let's say it goes from 8% to 10%. Let's say it goes from 8% to 12%. Doesn't fucking matter. He can get he can go 13%, 14%, the highest ever for a Republican, ever in recorded history. Doesn't matter. That will still work out to about $5 million if we're talking about the low end, to maybe $2.5 million if we're talking about the high end. Per vote. Per vote. And don't Republicans always talk about how we should be teaching people to fish instead of handing them fish? More of that in a minute. But if we're just looking at this in terms of a meme, right? Let's just think about memes. I found this meme. This was posted on Instagram. It's kind of funny. It breaks this down perfectly. It says, "Hey, yo, it's time you white boys pay us our reparations for slavery and shit." Reparations? No way. Trump announces $500 billion platinum plan for black Americans. The madman damns around suicide watch. It's about time. goes to the polls, votes for the Obama guy instead of the racist-ass cracker. This is basically what this is going to come down to. So if we look at recent polls, this one is this is a Fox News poll. It's looking at about 5% for the black vote for President Trump versus 93% for Joe Biden. The Obama guy, the guy who worked with Obama. 5%. 5%. But like I said, it doesn't matter. It could go up to 10%, 12%, 14%, a couple of 100,000 votes. $5 million per vote, $2 million per vote. There are far cheaper options. Well, first of all, if we're talking about how to get the black vote, we can look at a variety of different ways on how to get the black vote. First, if we can go to this Politico article. I've showed you this before. There's an article written by George Borjas. He's an economist, and it's called "Yes, Immigration Hurts American Workers." And if we just go down to this paragraph, it says both low and high-skilled natives are affected by the influx of immigrants. But because a disproportionate percentage of immigrants have few skills, it is low-skilled American workers, including many blacks and Hispanics, who have suffered most from this wage dip. The monetary loss is sizable. The typical high school dropout earns about $25,000 annually. According to the census data, immigrants admitted in the past 2 decades lacking a high school diploma have increased the size of the low-skilled workforce by 25%. As a result, the earnings of this particularly vulnerable group drop between $800 and $1,500 each year. And then we go to the study by Borjas as well. It talks about the employment rate of black men, and particularly those skilled black men, fell precipitously from 1960 to 2000. At the same time, the incarceration rate of black men rose markedly. Right? So Thomas Sowell is correct when he says that we can take 100 years of slavery and 30 years of the welfare state, and we can determine that 30 years of the welfare state since 1960 had a far bigger negative effect on black America than 100 years of slavery did. Thomas Sowell is absolutely correct in saying this. Statistically, absolutely correct. So the incarceration rate has risen substantially. The crime rate, the violent crime rate, has risen substantially since 1950 for the black American community. We're seeing this happen again. The fatherless home rate has risen substantially for the black American community. Prior to the 1960, we're talking about like the welfare state. If we look from 1947 to 1967, something like this, the unemployment rate dropped by about 40 points for black Americans. Now, after 1960 to 1980, the same 20-year period, it still fell as far as unemployment is concerned, but fell at a much lower rate, while the crime rate rose, while the incarceration rate rose, and while the fatherless homes rate rose in a much bigger percentage than everyone else. So Republicans, Trump, we're always talking about teaching a man to fish instead of handing them the fish. But this is handing them the fish. And what are they going to do with that fish? Well, we've seen what they're going to do with that fish. They're going to take that fish and slap you across the fucking face with it and then burn your fucking city down. That's what this comes down to here. And why not, if we want to talk about a cheaper way to get votes, why not go after the Midwest? Because we're going to need the Midwest to, once Texas goes permanently blue in 2028 because of the overwhelming demographic transformation this country has experienced. So if we look at the Hispanic vote, yeah, we might get about 41%, which is about the same that George Bush got, the record for Hispanics in 2004. But not because we're pandering, not because we're offering them money. It's because Black Lives Matter rioters, are going into these cities and destroying Tia's restaurant or destroying their Tio's taco truck or something like this. They think very racially just like blacks do. So if we look at the polling on this, right, we talk about how 70, 80% of blacks say that their skin color is their identity. Hispanics think very racially as well. The increase in support for Trump is not coming because he's pandering to them. It's coming because their businesses and communities are being destroyed by black rioters. And they don't like them too much. If we talk about who's racist in this country, we can look straight up at, every other group of people aside from white Americans, who are probably the least racially minded people in the country. And so a better way to get votes and a cheaper way to get votes, we're talking about $200 a vote versus $5 million a vote, is in the Midwest. We look at Michigan. We look at Minnesota, which almost went for Trump aside from a few thousand votes. We look at Wisconsin. And we could be proposing infrastructure plans using manufacturing companies in that region, right? In economically deprived regions of the Midwest and maybe the South. Maybe Ohio, Pennsylvania, things like this, right? Plan an infrastructure plan, $500 billion or $2 trillion infrastructure. We could be doing a lot better things with that $500 billion plan. So $500 billion can get you a heck of a lot more white votes than it will black votes, and at a far cheaper rate. You understand what I'm saying here? So there's a better way to spend the money. There's a much better way to spend the money, and there's a much better way to try to get the black votes. So that's what I have for you on that. That's what I have for you on Trump's $500 billion platinum plan. And by the way, who knows if this is even going to happen, right? It hasn't happened yet. Who knows if it's going to happen? It might not happen. This might just be him talking. And by the way, this came right after he tweeted out the viral video of that black Trump supporter in his truck talking about Trump. You know that video? Lots of people have been sharing it. It's probably the most viral video for like a black conservative ever. Trump shared that, and a couple of days later, he's talking about this $500 billion platinum plan. It's just so ridiculous. Anyway, all right, beloved brothers and sisters, let us rejoice in our God, for he takes great delight in bestowing benefits on his people. Let us fervently pray, increase your grace in your presence, Lord, eternal God, for whom 1,000 years are like each passing day. My goal is to eventually become a powerhouse of truth. That is why it is imperative that you check the links in the description below and go to either Patreon and Subscribestar and support us for at least the cost of a cup of coffee a month. We already have writers writing for theredelephants.com, but we'd like to bring on more in the near future. By the way, at theredelephants.com, you can also find t-shirts, hats, and other products. Check the links in the description below. It helps us out tremendously.